Yes, we're live right now, and okay, now they can hear you. My apologies for taking a while to enter you in. I was using the restroom.
No worries. I was actually watching your live, so I knew
Nice.
that you were away.
Keeping well
Thank.
informed. How you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me. Am I gonna? Is my video gonna be on this on your stream or
Are you
no?
comfortable with that?
Yeah, of course. I would love. Yeah, I think it's better that way.
Gotcha.
I think.
All right, I'm adding you in now. How are you doing? How are you, where do you live right now?
Right now, I'm in the Philippines, and I'm gonna be here for a while.
Just,
I'm Canadian and Iranian, but I live in the Philippines.
you've narrowly skipped out on the eve of some pretty severe civil unrest over here in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess is actually pretty apropos considering what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you saw my second follow-up emails because I suggested some other topics as well if you're interested.
Yeah, sure. I'll discuss anything. I love talking about things.
I saw in the stream you were mentioning that I have a Wikipedia page. It's interesting because I don't know. You're in favor of deplatforming people with controversial views and stuff.
Not necessarily controversial. I think if people are like openly calling for genocide, then that's probably reasonable they be removed from online platforms.
Well, I don't call for that, of course, but I got deplatformed a couple of times, and I think that's why I have a Wikipedia page. So I always think like, why are these people keep doing this to me? It's only helping me. So if it's helped me, you might not use that as a tactic against people.
In what
that
way
you
were you
think-
deplatformed?
Well, the first one. So the way Wikipedia works is that you have to have like news articles about you. You can't just for them to have a page about you, right? But the first one was from the government of Malaysia, and our local group. We call them consulates, Atheist Republic. By the way, I don't know if your audience knows. I'm founder of Atheist Republic. We're bigger on Facebook. On YouTube, we're pretty small, so you can check us out there. But on Facebook, we have like more than 2 million followers, right? But that's not important. That doesn't mean anything. But when the government of Malaysia came after our local, tried to cancel us. I mean, by cancel, they were hunting. Their deputy minister in Malaysia was saying we need to hunt down these atheists. And all they did was they just got together as atheists to have some drinks with each other, and they were losing their minds. Like, we have atheists in Malaysia? Like, what the hell? And they were trying to figure out who these people are, and the government was after them. And we tried to get as much attention to that as possible, and it got on the news. And that was the first one. Then there was a couple of times that Facebook removed our page. And we made a lot of noise about that. We're the biggest atheist community in the world, and Facebook just removed us. And Facebook brought us back and apologized, which was nice. And that got us into the news. Then there was I had a speech in Mount Royal University in Calgary. I was supposed to talk about Islam and how dangerous Islam is. I don't know if the topic was if Islam is worse than Nazism, something like that. But then the New Zealand shooting, the New Zealand shooting happened. We could discuss that if you want. And then they were like, okay, the university was like, we can't have this event right after the New Zealand shootings. That's like inappropriate. It's like out of touch. Then they canceled my event, and then I was in Calgary for the event anyways because they just told us like a day before the event that the event is canceled, and then they got a lot of attention that the event is canceled. So what they did was they just moved the organizers of the event, like, okay, we can't have it at the university, let's have it here. So we just end up having the event anyways, while a couple of radio shows contacting me to try to talk to me about what I think about the event being canceled. So we actually got a lot more bigger audience because of that than the people in the university.
Yeah, my argument would generally be that there are some types of deplatforming that usually end up bolstering people because it only gives them more media attention. Like, for example, Count Dankula, I don't know if you know who he is, but he had a government fine brought against him for taking a video of his little pup doing a Nazi salute or whatever. That ended up basically skyrocketing him to massive prominence to the point where he was even able to run for office. But for example, if Facebook was to delete your page and then just keep it deleted and you were taken off Twitter, that would pretty much kill your ability to like meaningfully advocate for yourself in the same way you are now. It's the removal of from YouTube for YouTubers that tends to massively destroy their ability to engage in outreach. And for what it's worth, certain types of deplatforming are almost ubiquitously useful with regards to destroying people's public outreach. There have been studies done on it. It's why they fear it so much.
I mean, the studies I've seen, it seemed like it destroyed that one individual, but it helped the movement.
I'm
It
not
helped the
sure.
movement while destroying that individual specifically.
I haven't seen any data to that effect. I don't think the movement is generally helped when their advocates who have like 1 million subs are taken off the platform or anything like that.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I would completely be okay with agreeing with you if data supports that. Like, if you show me that, you know, fascism could be stopped. Like, I'm a utilitarian, right? So if
Hey, me
I'm,
too.
I'm only, I'm only against this method because I don't think it doesn't work. But if you actually show me, like, actually, no, we could reduce the chances of fascism by deplatforming people, I would just switch sides immediately. I would be like, okay, great. I just, I mean, I haven't, maybe you're right, but I haven't seen it working. Everything I've seen seems to say just the opposite. But if you're right and I'm wrong,
No, well,
I
it's
would-
yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'm not like this isn't a position I'm married
yeah.
to. The evidence that I've seen
Yeah.
seems to indicate that it's correct. Well, obviously, I'll adopt whatever positions I think are most effective, as long as
Right.
they're moral and so on. Set good rules for the future. So, I forget who exactly it was who set us up, but here we have
Vikram.
Vikram. We have a difference in belief when it comes to Antifa and political violence.
I mean, I think when I listen to you today and the other time, it seems like on Antifa we might agree. I mean, I'm against like the recent tweet by Trump declaring them a terrorist group seems ridiculous to me. I mean, they don't seem to, for them to be a terrorist group, they have to have like a consistent ideology, and it seems to me like, based on what I've seen, they seem to differ from one chapter to another. But I don't agree with the conspiracy. I want to replace. I think it's actually very smart. Even though it's ridiculous tweet, I think it's a very smart strategy because I think this might actually help the Antifa brand. I don't think he's going to be able to consider them a terrorist group. Like, I don't think it's going to be like it's such a huge violations of, I don't know, free speech and everything else. All it does, it makes Antifa bigger and more people wanting to join them. And I think they actually like that. I think the more of a bigger boogeyman they have, they might think like, okay, look, these are the people you need to be scared of. This is why you need to vote for me, right? So, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah, I mean,
that's more of-
fascism requires some kind of national plot. It's important to
Right.
believe you have enemies within and without the state that you can sort of nefariously gesture at as a justification for amping state power and engaging in militarism.
So what do you think is the chances that he doesn't want Antifa to go away? He sees it as a great opportunity to tell people, to remind his base why they need to get out and vote for him.
I don't think he's smart enough to really denote a distinction. I think he just, I think, because the thing is, like, fascists are very emotional. They just do, they just, I guess, they kind of follow, like, the preset ideological programming that they have alongside their beliefs. I don't really know if it's necessarily the case that they understand the direction they're heading in.
I mean, fascists, like religious leaders, use emotional people. Like they themselves could be above it and just realize that they're just. I mean, no, I agree that Trump seems to be an idiot, regarding many things, but he seems to be a good salesman. Like,
Yeah,
he
but,
seems to be a
like-
good
like, here's an-
bullshit artist.
Like, if if we were to speak of religion, for example, the history of religion is the history of the suppression of minorities, at least for the most part, with some exceptions. And there
Right.
are plenty of, especially here in the United States of America, plenty of Protestant leaders, fundamentalist Christians, who fucking hate everything: miscegenation, black-white marriage, gay people, trans people, the whole 9 yards. But I think that many of them, especially the regular people, if you were to ask them conscientiously, do you hate these people, or are you just following what you believe is the honest interpretation of your scripture. I think if I asked them, many of them would, in all sincerity, say they're just trying to follow scripture. I don't think many people are aware of the cognitive biases that lead them towards the perpetuation of their own like failed ideologies. I think they just kind of do what they do.
Do you think their scriptures encourage is that behavior? Or do you think their scripture has any influence on their biases?
Yeah, I would say so. Because if you're religious, you've basically given yourself permission to believe something without evidence. And if you believe one thing without evidence, you've given yourself permission to believe more than one thing without evidence.
And oh, great, that's fantastic. And you believe that about Islam as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm anti-theist. I think that superstition does immeasurable harm to human like interaction, human society.
Because I watched some of your previous videos and you were suggesting, I think maybe I misunderstood you, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong. Or maybe you changed your mind, or maybe I completely misunderstood you. But it seemed like you were suggesting that like Muslims, when Muslims commit atrocities in the name of Islam, that's purely because of socioeconomic factors and it's not because of their scripture.
Yeah, I think the scripture begets a sort of irrationality that might not exist otherwise, but I don't think it's anything specific to Islam. I think that like when it comes to the actual distinction in behavior between radical Islam and other sects of different religions, it is socioeconomical. If we were to replace the historical conditions of what are currently like the Muslims in like Iraq and Afghanistan with fundamentalist Christians, we just swap them, I think the exact same thing would happen. If you mix like irrationality with those people, then yeah.
Would it be exact? I mean, if there's scripture, I mean, I'm okay with, I fight every religion and every superstition, every dogma that is out there. So I'm, you know, but I
You're
don't
formerly
think...
Muslim, yes? You're
Yes,
formerly Muslim, yes?
I'm an ex-Muslim atheist, yes. I mean, if you watch our YouTube, you know, when we do our news coverage on Atheist Republic, we have like an ex-Muslim, which is me, then we have an ex-Christian, an ex-Jew, and an ex-Hindu, just to make sure we're covering everything, all perspectives, right? But I don't think it's, I mean, I think it's impossible for them all to be equally dangerous. I mean, I would even argue that it's more like, I think Islam is the most dangerous, but if somebody even said, no, I think Christianity is more dangerous than Islam, I think that would be even more likely than saying them they're all equally dangerous. Like it's almost impossible for any two ideologies to be equally harmful. Like,
yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I would make the argument that Christianity is multitudes more dangerous then. But it wouldn't be because of the scripture. It would just be because of socioeconomic factors. Christians are in control of America, and America is the most dangerous country on a geopolitical scale. So since they're running the reins there. But I mean, hey, if we swap that, if America was like a radical Islamicist country in the same way right now it's pretty radically Protestant, it's entirely possible I would feel the other way.
So if the Christian countries right now are more dangerous because of the socioeconomic factors, then it's not the real. So I agree that there's multiple factors that makes even not even in one country, even in one person. Like for example, if you look at a Muslim terrorist, it's not just the Islam, right, that made that person a terrorist, or else every goddamn Muslim would be a terrorist, and we know that's not the case, right? So there's many factors, right? But Islam, I always suggest that Islam is more often a negative factor, not the only factor, but a negative factor. But if you're suggesting that the Christian countries are more dangerous right now, not because of the scripture, but because of the socioeconomic factor, then you're also suggesting that it's not Christianity that is making those countries more dangerous than Islamic countries. It's other factors that is making those countries more dangerous than Islamic countries.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But okay.
Yeah, so I would say the religion is just an amplifying factor because it lets people behave irrationally with a systemic justification. But when it comes to the radical Islam in the Muslim world right now, a lot of what we see over there can be reflected in some of the radicalization of right-wing people here in the United States of America. The way ISIS people are recruited is nearly identical to the way alt-righters are recruited. You get these young sexually frustrated men who feel there used to be a glory to their civilization, but now they've been emasculated. You tell them that through glory and violence they can rebuild civilization like of their own. It's just a different story that we tell. They want a caliphate, and we want, I don't know, some Zoomer Christian monarchy or something. I don't know, whatever the alt-right wants, you know?
Right, and I actually follow a lot of alt-right content, and they openly admit that now. Like this used to, like they are actually openly admiring radical Islamic tactics, and they trying to be like, why are they winning? We have to look at them and see why they're winning so much. And like they're like, we value family values over this gay trans stuff. They do as well. We look at women the same way they do. We understand the value of the community the same way they do. Like we have so many things in common, and they're winning and we're losing. Why is it? We need to. So
I admire their honesty. I really do.
yeah, I mean, they say that to their own people. They don't openly, yeah.
Well, yeah, but with themselves, I mean, because they're basically the same. Really, like an ISIS member and alt-righter are really just separated by fashion, scripture, and like headwear. You know, that's about it. One wears the MAGA hat. One wears like the turban or the hat sometimes. But that's about it, really.
But it seems like the Muslim fundamentalists are more successful right now.
I would think,
Right
but
now.
they don't have a strong liberal democracy to counter them, right? Because we fucked up
Right.
the Middle East so bad. That's why, by the way, I say that the Christians are more dangerous, because everything that's going on right now in the Muslim world, all the bloodshed and violence and reactionary tendencies, are a product of the destabilization of the Middle East that we participated
everything.
in. A fair amount of it. I don't take credit for like Pakistan and India or anything, but when it comes to ISIS, I mean, that is 100% on us.
Well, not 100%. I would agree that it is on, well, not you personally, on your government, but
Me personally,
don't
I did it.
don't take all the credit. Come on, I think this is a little bit too self-centered. Like the same way that the people.
99%. I assign a lot of culpability to us because we have the most geopolitical agency. We have the most.
I think you're
America
dismissing
can do
some
it
of
at
the
once.
agency of the people there. I think like just the same way that people who believe in American exceptionalism and believe that United States is is responsible for everything great that happens in the world. I think just as extreme and that is, I think that people on the other side that want to take 99% for credit for all the bad shit that happens in these countries are also being. Yeah, I mean, I admit that. Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, I think Trump, Bush, and Obama are war criminals, right? And I think But for example, if you look at what's happening in Yemen. Obama and Trump are responsible for the greatest humanitarian crisis of our lifetime in Yemen, the bombing of innocent civilians there, right? But you know who else is responsible for that? Iran and Saudi Arabia. And you know what they use so United States is aiding that war, but the main struggle that exists between Iran and Saudi Arabia is a war between Shias and Sunnis. It's an ideological battle that has become so costly at such a massive level. I mean, actually, it was the greatest humanitarian crisis of our lifetime until recently. Now it's China's. Yeah.
The Uyghur Muslims. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And while I do actually agree with what you're saying, though I would make the argument, of course, the reason Saudi Arabia and Iran are the way they are is because of us as well. With the Ayatollah and with our propping up of the monarchy in Saudi Arabia, like it's entirely. I'm of the opinion, or at least I had this told to me by a professor once. I'm not a historian. That Saudi Arabia probably would have undergone a revolution if it weren't for our continued support of them sometime in the past 30 years. But the argument that I'm trying to make, I guess, is that when you're assigning blame for like these big geopolitical situations, usually the culpability you assign is a product of where you think the most change can be made. Generally speaking, I don't assign a lot of agency to actors in the Middle East because it feels like a lot of what they do is downwind of geopolitical activity being done by larger, stronger countries. And from a sociological perspective, if you live in an area that's constantly being fucked over by more powerful nations, if you're the victim of like a constant colonialist, I guess, agenda, it's very easy to backslide into reactionary tendencies because you don't have the stability necessary for like a liberal government.
Do you think like the Muslims killing Hindus in such astronomical, like the numbers are crazy? Or like a lot of, given that Westerners are so self-centered, they always think that they're the main victims of Islam, but that's not even close. Like it was the Hindus that are. Actually, the number one victims of Islam are Muslims, but the number two victims are the number two victim of Islam are the Hindus, and that was before Western imperialism. That was before. I mean, at that point, they were the Muslims that were the ones that were doing the colonizing. They were not even being colonized by anybody. But when they were killing the Hindus, I mean, they named mountains. The Hindu Kush mountains means killing Hindus. They killed so many Hindus. They had to name mountains after it. But at that time, so here's what I agree with you. Like, usually the motive is not the religion, right? Usually the motivation is greed or geopolitical, power or whatever that is. But religion is the tool that these leaders use. And the reason why they use it is because it works. Like, do you think when they were killing the Hindus, using the marketing and spreading the ideology that these are heathens, these are godless, idol-worshipping heathens was not an effective tactic to mobilize more and more Muslims to go kill the Hindus? It was very effective to see them as see them as godless, see them as heathens. And it is completely in line with their scripture and in line with their hadith and their
that would be my disagreement, because I agreed with everything up until that point. I wouldn't take responsibility for the conflict between the Hindu and the Muslims, because that goes on a while back. Though, I mean, the Hindus are paying it back in full now with Modi, so we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. But
I completely
yeah, but with regards to that, I don't know if it's a scripture thing. I think the process of othering is all you really need. Maybe religion is a stronger motivator for conflict because your eternal soul, like, it persists after your death. So you think, like, whatever, if I die in glorious battle, like okay, I've got myself sheltered up. You can't do that with nationality, because if you die and all you believe in is your country, you're still dead. But I don't think, like, the scripture is a necessary precondition there. It's just the fact that you belong to different religions. America did the same thing when it came to the Iraqi Muslims back in 2001 and 2002. We trained our soldiers to think of them as, like, less than human. We've been doing that for a long time too. I guess I couldn't take responsibility for the Hindu-Muslim conflict. I guess I think that religion just as a tool is a really good way of engaging in dehumanization and mysticism. I guess, well, that's its point, at least the latter thing.
It's not necessary, but it really helps. It's kind of like, when people say, oh, religion doesn't kill people, people kill people. It's kind of like the whole, oh, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Like, yeah, people kill people, but people with guns kill more people, right? So yeah. The religion is a very powerful tool. And I understand that the motive of the leaders might be a different thing, but the leaders need people to actually believe in this bullshit to be able to use people. And I would be very happy with disarming the leaders from this very powerful tool. I mean, and it is this. I mean, the reason why. So, for example, you mentioned Iran, right? And I completely agree with you. Iran would not be an Islamic theocracy right now if it wasn't because of the help of United Kingdom and United States. And right now, for example, when my mom got cancer, I couldn't go see her in Iran because if I go back to Iran, I will get executed for my apostasy, right? Yeah. So leaving Islam is punishable by death. So is the United States responsible for that, for me not being able to go back to Iran? Yeah, because they're responsible for creating an Islamic theocracy. But is the fact that my change of opinion is punishable by death, the fact that it's written in Islamic scripture, is that not also responsible? Like, this is like black and white. This is like written in their hadith. Do you think the laws happens to by chance be the same as exactly what the Islamic scripture dictates?
I guess scripture can definitely inform policy. I guess my main concern would be it feels like all religious authorities basically end up adopting the same reactionary politics no matter where they are. It seems like anytime religiosity and conservatism mix, you get basically the same smorgasbord of reactionary politics. When it comes to preventing miscegenation, the veneration of the state or an authoritarian leader, when it comes to preventing gay marriages, or I guess now trans people are a thing, and religious people tend not to be that big on that either. I don't know how well it directly translates into the scripture, because religious people fucking pick and choose scripture so goddamn hard. I have never met a religious person who actually live by the word of their holy book, but people will bust out very specific lines to justify the same set of principles all across the world. So I don't know how much the actual scripture is relevant there, though I acknowledge it probably does have at least some effect, because Islam and Christianity obviously did turn out differently.
So here's something that supports your position. I lived half of my life in an Islamic country, living under Islamic rule, okay? And everybody I met was a Muslim for a very long time. And other than my religion teacher in school, I haven't met, the entire time that I lived there, I didn't meet a single person that had read the Hadith, right? So most people think Islamic law comes from the Quran, but 99% of Islamic law comes from the Hadith, right? And most Muslims have never read the Quran, right? And among the people that have read the Quran, a very small fraction of them, Muslims, have read the Hadith, right? But so this will support you, like, okay, so whatever they're doing cannot be influenced by these texts if they're not reading it, right? So that will support your position. The thing is that most Muslims are technically not following Islam. Most Muslims are really good people. Most Muslims are better than Islam. I always say, like, most Christians are better than Christianity, and most Muslims are better than Islam. And
what about the Jews?
Actually, the Jews are the best.
I'm pulling your leg. I'm pulling your leg.
I know, but actually, I know you're joking, but seriously, like, they have the highest percentage of seculars and atheists in their community.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I grew up in a very, very Jewish community. I swear to God, like 10% of them actually followed the Torah. The rest of them just, I don't know, had better food than their neighbors. You know, that was pretty much the extent of their cultural influence.
There are atheist rabbis, which people like, how does that, what the hell? And there are rabbis that are like, oh yeah, I don't believe any of this shit. We just like the traditions. we just like the food and the traditions. Like, of course none of this happens.
Yeah, I mean, my house was agnostic and we had a Christmas tree. Just that cultural shit just seeps in. It becomes irreligious to an extent. I don't associate Christmas with Jesus Christ, but I know a lot of people do.
So the way that religion, I think, influences the society and behavior is not the direct way. Like, just recently in Iran, I don't know if you noticed, there was a girl that was beheaded by her own father, a 13-year-old girl that was beheaded by her own father in an honor killing because the father saw the daughter was running away with a man, and the father didn't like that. And he decided to behead him with something that was not very sharp. It took a long time. It was a very painful death, right? And like, something that must support your position is, like, there's actually nothing in Islam that says that's okay, right? There's nothing in the Quran or Hadith that supports that, but yet we see honor killing happening mostly in Islamic communities. So how is it that something like honor killing happens mostly in Islamic communities, even though neither the Quran or Hadith says it's okay? This is actually a sin in Islam. You can't just go kill your own daughter, right?
I hope so.
Even if you want to punish somebody for adultery, I mean, I'm not defending Islam, because in Islam the punishment for adultery is death, but you need to have, like, a council. There needs to be judges. You cannot just randomly go kill your own daughter. But the way that, like, religion influences the behavior of people is very indirect. Like, the Muslims don't go like, oh, should I go kill my daughter? Let me check the Hadith. They don't do that. There's certain ideas that the religious leaders get from the scripture, and based on the scripture, they promote the ones that interest them, or, you know, promotes their agenda, and they don't promote the rest. And those, like, indirectly becomes the norm in the society among some group of people, not among some others, depending on people's political affiliation. Maybe they accept the religious class, or maybe they don't. So it's the effect is very indirect, but there is the effect from the scripture to behavior. Like, for example, we know Christianity is very anti-woman rights, right? But do you think Christianity do you honestly think that Christianity would have been as powerful of a tool against women's rights if we had removed the verses in the Bible that said that women should not, like, we know, you know this, right?
I'm going to be honest, I genuinely don't know. I'm not. I'm not
Okay.
saying that to challenge your point. I actually genuinely do not know, because I know, for example, that honor killings were also pretty common across Southeast Asia, and I'm pretty sure Christians in the Middle East do them as well. Which seems like it's more of a cultural thing, or like there's this weird collection of cultural tendencies
Hindus
that
do it
tend
as
to.
well.
Yeah. Like billions and billions of people who aren't Muslims, and there are
Billions?
these. Oh well, because Hindus, right? Are there not over a billion Hindus?
Yeah, but I thought you were saying billions of people do it.
Oh no! Yeah, sorry,
okay.
billions of
Like,
people belong to groups that have been known to do it. My
Oh,
apologies.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay. A better world there. Yeah. I genuinely don't know how these things, like the cultural things, like metastasize around religion. This is the argument that I generally make because I argue with a lot of conservatives, a lot
Hmm.
of them, and one of the frustrating things is many of them are very Islamophobic, and when they are Islamophobic, they will cite the
Don't you
reasons why.
say anti-Muslim bigot. Don't say Islamophobic.
You don't like that term? Why not?
Because anti-Muslim bigot addresses the problem in these communities. They're against the people. Being against the ideology is not. I don't see. There's no issue with that. Like, I mean, I'm Islamophobic. Islam wants to kill me. So, right?
If we
But
were to
I
be
think-
specific, then they don't like
it-
Muslims very much.
Say, and that's why we're trying to encourage people use anti-Muslim bigotry, which is a real problem that needs to be addressed. Right? It's a very bad. It's something that we fight against. So anti-Muslim bigots. Yeah.
I'd
But
argue
Islamophobe-
colloquially these probably mean the same thing, but the distinction aside, they don't like Muslims very much. They hate Muslims, and I talk with them about this, and very often the reasons why they say they hate Muslims is because they're aggressive, they throw gays off rooftops, they hate women, blah 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 blah. But the issue is these are conservatives I'm talking to. These conservatives do not themselves like women or gay people very much. When I talk with them, it's this weird attempt, like they don't like the Muslim way of being bigoted, but they're okay with the bigotry itself. For them, now, gay conversion therapy using electric shocks, that's acceptable. But when you're starting to throw people off rooftops, that's where they draw the line. So the line I tend to ask, the thing I try to argue was, and I remember I did this with Sargon of Akkad when we were talking about the grooming gangs in England, which is a widely over-exaggerated phenomenon, but whatever the case is, we were talking about that, and he was like, these Muslims, they're coming in, they're raping kids. Well, okay, do you think, what do you think the general ideological predisposition of these Muslim groomers are? Do you think they are misogynistic, or do you think they're egalitarian? And if you don't believe they're egalitarian, would it not make more sense to target them for their anti-women beliefs or their anti-gay beliefs? Why not target them for the things that are bad about their ideas, rather than the labels you think most aptly describe? And that would be the thing I guess I would ask you. Why not oppose the honor killings, the homophobia, the apostasy accusations, instead of opposing Islam, which can implicitly mean you end up getting roped in with people who are bigots against Muslims?
Well, one thing I agree with you is that, based on watching your previous videos, is that I do consider content creators to be responsible for the audience that they attract, right?
That's good.
So that's why I also call out, even if I do think Islam is most dangerous, I want to make sure that my audience knows that I think Christianity is also extremely dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit less dangerous than Islam; it's still extremely dangerous and needs to be called out for its homophobia, for its anti-woman position, for its anti-science position, and everything else. And also, but the thing is that we do call out homophobia, even if it's not coming from Islam, or if it's coming from other sources. Even when it comes from, one thing we do actually really call out atheists a lot. One thing that we do often is we go after Chinese atheist regime for the way that it's treating Muslims, right? We do that often. And we have like a lot of people that get attracted to us because of a lot of anti-Muslim bigots who find us because of our anti-Islam content. Every time I notice that, oh my God, there seems to be a lot of bigots in our audience, I was like, okay, we need to make sure that they know what our position is. I mean, I don't want them to go away. I'm hoping that they stay and they change
Thinking
their mind.
like, this guy's based, he agrees with me, fuck Muslims. Yeah, you want to avoid that impression on them.
No. I don't. I want them to think that I defend Muslims.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you don't want them to leave thinking that you support like a reactionary attack. Yeah.
And I also want them to stay hate watching me, and because I noticed some of them actually do change their opinions. Like I follow some people that commented often in our YouTube channels, and they seem, after a couple of years, they seem to be changing the way they talk about these issues. Like I'm hoping that at least we had some influence on some of them. But the thing is that I don't want to ignore the fact that Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism does have an influence on some of this homophobia, on some of this misogyny, on some of this anti-intellectualism, on some of this superstitious belief, on some of this gullibility. I want to, if the source is not Islam or Christianity and we notice it, sometimes we have stories and we notice, like, even though it's a Muslim, we like, okay, this is probably not because he's a Muslim. And we say that. They're like, okay, we're calling this bullshit out, but we can't, this is probably not because of Islam. But it's still, I think we have done a good job. Like, we have lost a shit ton of our supporters when we started attacking the Hindu nationalists in India, right? Because we attracted so many people for a while, because a lot of Hindus really started following us because they loved our Islam bashing. And then as soon as we turned our target onto the Hindu,
they were like, whoa, our extremist religion conservatism is totally fine. Whoa. Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear a person care about taking a responsibility for their audience. It's so rare online. So many people will just they'll say or do fucking anything, and then they play dumb to their audience. And I think one of the biggest, it's like, okay, here's an example. I'm not going to name any specific names, but this happens all the time. Child molestation, not a great thing. Probably should stop it. Collectively, everyone.
Probably.
A lot of people on YouTube do these expose hit pieces on child molesters, but some conservative YouTubers will do them on people who are gay or transgender. Now, there are a lot of pedophiles in the United States of America. If you want to just Google child sex offender, you'll see a row of white faces, white men all across the board, But you can find these very specific cases where it's actually a gay person or a trans person, and then if you exclusively talk about that, they'll only impugn the child molestation, but their audience really gets off on this being associated with gay and trans people. And they'll do this video after video, and they're building this broader narrative of trans or gay people being child predators. But when you call them on that, they'll say well, no, I'm just criticizing the child molestation. I'm just choosing people who I think would make for interesting stories. Meanwhile, their comment sections are full of people fucking gas the degenerates, that crap. So it's really refreshing, I guess, to see a person who actually cares about this. Or cares about the outcome. When you said, I guess from the beginning that you were utilitarian, I think that usually denotes probably a better attitude towards content creation than most people.
Yeah, and part of the reason, okay, so this is a tricky thing I do. Part of the reason why I say, oh, Islam is worse than Nazism, and then it's kind of like a trap for these anti-Muslim bigots, because they come in, they're like, oh, what is this? And then they read my article and they're like, they keep reading that I'm saying that most Muslims are good. The main victim of Islam is Muslims. We're trying to, and then we call that. I call that in the article the influence of United States and Germany and United Kingdom and the war in Yemen. But I also mentioned, for example, the Shia-Sunni divide. So I'm not trying to just change the opinions. I mean, part of our activism, we are responsible for a lot of people leaving Islam, Christianity, mostly those two actually. But we are also trying to, we are also trying to reach out to people from that are anti-Muslim bigots or from the alt-right, and so I don't mind attracting them with my anti-Islam content, but I do want to be transparent about why I'm against their views. I don't want them all to go away. I do want them to come in, and maybe we could change their opinions as well. When I say I want to be responsible for my audience, I don't want them. That doesn't mean I want them to go away, because I think maybe they will, if 10 of them come and see like, oh my God, this person is anti-Islam, this guy is one of us. If 9 of them leave, one of them might be like, I didn't think about it that way. Maybe maybe that one person will be.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I do a similar thing too with it's dumb. It's maybe a little bit more tepid than what you do, but I do the same thing with women. Since I argue with so many conservatives, a lot of them are like frustrated young men, and women aren't as oppressed in at least in the United States of America as many of the groups that are targeted by these groups, like transgender people, for example. So I'll make sometimes very flippant comments about women, like, oh, the femoids are like withholding sex from us or what have you. Or I deliberately invoke, I guess, like the a kind of playful bigotry that I think appeals to some of these people. But then when you pull back, it's like, wait a second, I'm actually an intersectional feminist. Like, here's a bunch of arguments on like gender abolitionism, But I understand it, yeah, because that the attention grabbing is part of getting the people over whose minds need to be changed the most. And you want, if I'm understanding this properly, your frustration, or at least one of your larger frustrations, is that there are many legitimate reasons to criticize Islam, but people don't criticize Islam. They just hate Muslims. And you're trying to redirect that energy towards a more meaningful criticism of the ideology.
Right, and they're trying to use anti-Islam narratives to excuse anti-Muslim bigotry, and we don't want to let them that. And one thing I tell Muslims is like, listen, the more you let us shit on your Islam, but the more you're taking the platform away from people that want to attack you personally. I always tell them, like, it's much better for you to be offended than it's much better for you to be challenged on your ideas rather than your rights being challenged. Like, we're talking, like, we will attack your ideas, and you could attack atheism as much as you want. I mean, we welcome that. You tell us, we tell you why we think Islam is a danger to our planet, and you tell us why atheism is a danger to our planet, and we could debate that. But if people want to come and challenge your rights instead of challenging your ideas, we will be on your side. Like, we will be with you. I mean, and we haven't been just talking about that. We have demonstrated that. Like, it seems like recently we have even more content defending Muslims in India and China more than our anti-Islam content, because it is right now, I mean, a lot of people think like, oh, anti-Muslim bigotry in North America and Western Europe. That is nothing. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important. It's important, but it's nothing compared to the anti-Muslim bigotry that exists right now in China and India, right?
Yeah, and that's what you said earlier, right? In many ways, like, the greatest victims of Islam are Muslims as well. Like, implicitly, if you're attacking the ideology, you're often defending the people who subscribe to it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, for example, I know for you as an American, countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia don't look very powerful, but for a country like Yemen, Saudi Arabia and Iran look like giants, okay?
Yeah,
and
it's all relative. I'm so fucking glad to be American, dude. Holy shit. I love waking up every morning and thinking, we are completely in control of our geopolitical station, at least until China gets a little bigger, okay? It's right. So nice to feel.
Yeah, enjoy that while that lasts.
Yeah.
But like, right now, the people in Yemen are paying the price for Iran's ambition for a Shia empire, right? Like, all these people that are against Western colonial empire building and intervention
want their own fucking Eastern empires to yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I watch Kyle Kulinski, and he keeps sounding like he's excusing the actions of Iran because United States is worse, or because of United States intervention.
This is one of the biggest fucking problems I have arguing with other lefties. They think being anti-American makes another country good. Like, congrats. Right. While you're anti-colonial, you know who else was? Fucking Imperial China. Nazi Germany literally predicated its rise to power on anti-colonial, keep the foreign hands off our country, get the Jews out of our banking systems rhetoric. You can't, like, this is ubiquitous. Everyone's anti-colonial, then they make their own empire.
Right. I mean, and Iran is not even hiding it anymore. They're openly admitting that they're trying to intervene in other countries' politics and build a Shia empire using Shia ideology. Like, this is why I'm telling you that the ideology works. Like, why do you think that Iran's influence is mostly felt where there's a Shia ideology? Like, they have very little influence in Islamic countries that are Sunni, but they're dominating over countries where their ideology is Shia, because it's easier for them to do that. So this shows that ideology has influence.
And Russia did the exact same thing too. Back during the beginning of the Soviet Union, they had the satellite states they conquered. It's just it's a very common frustration for me, where people think that being anti-colonial, there is one country on earth that is anti-colonial. I'm sorry, that isn't anti-colonialism, and it's the United States of America, because we're uncolonizable. Every single other country has a legacy of anti-colonialism because they're the ones fighting out for themselves. But that just means you don't like being picked on. It doesn't mean that you're against the subjugation of human beings. It just means you want to be the one who's doing the subjugating. I have a question for you, if I may.
Go ahead.
What the fuck do we do? Geopolitically, if you were the president of the United States or some sort of, I don't know, NATO, whatever, a coalition, what policies do you think could best be done to bring the Middle East, to bring the Islamic world into a better place?
Right. So I think providing. So here's what where United States fucked up. United States, by supporting countries like Saudi Arabia, it's very difficult for it to now intervene as a support of human rights, right?
Yeah.
Right. Is it like it's very hard for people to believe what your true intentions are when the only time you care about human rights is when your enemies are violating human rights, right? When your allies are violating human rights, like Saudi Arabia, you're like, yeah, whatever. And in fact, you put them as the head of human rights in the United States. Did you see that? That they put Saudi Arabia as the head?
And with Israel too. Yeah, we have no moral justification to intervene peacefully in the Middle East and invest in those countries while with what we're doing in Yemen and Syria, and with Israel and Saudi Arabia being on our bankroll, makes it impossible.
Right. I'm against Israel's right-wing government as well, but the Israeli. I've been to Israel. It was the best.
They're not as bad as Saudi Arabia, of course.
It's not even close. Yeah. Right. To be fair to Israelis, there's a lot of activism inside Israel against the right-wing government, and those are the people I met with. So maybe my impression.
I hope they win out, because right now the U.S. is not funding those people; it is funding the right-wingers. And because we basically treat Israel like a military base right now. It pretty much only exists in the way that it does, so we can justify the ratcheting of tensions against their neighbors. And the religious thing with the fundamentalists, right? Because they think the Jews have to be in possession of the Holy Land in order for the rapture to come, right?
Yeah, and United States involvement in Israel is destroying Israel's secularism, and is helping more religious nut job get in power there. So that's something else. But what they could do is, it might be too late for this, but if they were supportive of all forms of dissent equally, like just be like, give everybody a voice. You know what I mean? Like, they could invest in technology that makes it harder for governments to shut down people's internet, right? Like, I think this would actually solve most of the world's authoritarian oppression of dissent in China, in Iran, in Saudi Arabia. If we could manage to find out something with, I don't know how this stuff works, but if you could find a way for people to be able to just connect with their phones to satellites and just have free internet in Iran everywhere, that would make activists in Iran, because right now there's a lot of censorship. It's very hard to get access information. The government, even when people come up with filters and ways around to go around the censorship, is extremely slow. But if everybody had easy access to data and easy access for them to communicate with each other. Like, I don't know if you saw in the last protest in Iran, the government just literally shut down the internet in the entire country. It was unprecedented. Like, no country has ever done that. Like, internet over the entire country shut down. Like, nobody even know that Iran could do that. Like, there's a switch for the internet.
Yeah, the guy, he's got a button right under his day. He's got a red button. He just hit one time he bumped it with his knee. Like, whoops, shit. It's fucking stocks plummeted. One of the old hat ideas for spreading democracy was capital investment. That if you invest in a country and you set up businesses there and you have like a flourishing trade relationship between your country and their country, that this will necessarily lead to like a more liberal society there, because you need a stable country for businesses to run properly, and stability tends to bring about progressivism. The issue, and my question is, it didn't seem to work that well for China. They're still not that great, even though as a capitalist country, they're arguably more cutthroat than we are. So I wonder, like, how do we, as a geopolitical entity, like, to what degree can we engage?
I argue if it didn't work, because it might have worked. I mean, China and the United States would never go to war with each other. It would be it's so costly to both of them because of the trade relationships that they have, right? And also the economic prosperity might eventually lead to more democracy, but not because the way it seems like it works is not a function of GDP, it's a function of GDP per capita. And even though China right now has a very huge GDP, the GDP per capita in China is still very low. So my hope is that if this data is true, as the GDP per capita in China grows, and again, this is not unanimous, because even if the GDP per capita in a country is high, if the government's main income is not from tax money, but it's actually from like oil coming out of the ground or some other natural resources, you're still not very accountable to your people. But as the GDP per capita grows and the source of government's power keeps being reduced compared to the power of people, if you could actually measure people's power in their spending power, then people will switch to just demanding, more people will switch from demanding food and shelter to like, okay, we already have food and shelter. We want to be able to say whatever we want now. We want security. We want peace. We want government off of our back. The demands, start switching. You keep climbing the Maslow's hierarchy of need. So it might be that the reason why for China we're not there yet is because even though China's GDP is number 2 in the world, I think right now, I don't know, it's number 2 or number 3. I think it's number 2. The GDP per capita is very low, and maybe as they keep prospering and becoming bigger, I mean, and this is a support for change from within rather than change from outside, right? So you basically, the policies that I'm in favor of are policies that empowers the people within the country to make their own demands, rather than other countries saying, this is our demands and we're going to use human rights as an excuse to make our demands. Be like, no, give the power to the people and you will see the change from within.
I just hope it doesn't turn into some kind of radical populist, like conservative theocracy, which is always, because like right now, for example, like in the United States of America, if we gave if we like absolved the bonds and just allowed people to independently arrive at like a government of their choosing, I'm not entirely confident it would end up being a democracy. So hopefully, I guess my
constitutional democracy, that there's some things that shouldn't be up for people to choose.
Yeah, I hope so. Maybe getting like a new constitution written or something, but it'd have to be like some long-standing like bottom-up cultural change for it to be meaningfully possible.
Yeah, I mean, China is long away from having the problem being too much democracy.
Yeah, it's not a while out. I think.
Right. Right. I thought we were going to disagree more. This is not a debate.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised that we ended up having such a pleasant conversation. No, but I really appreciate that. My perspective, I guess my experience with atheists online has generally been fairly negative. When people call themselves atheists, I tend to get a little distrustful, because to me this usually translates into I guess a prejudice of sorts against people who do have religious beliefs. And while I hate religion as a concept, I've always thought, like, as a utilitarian at least, if I want to improve the world and lessen the impact religion has on it, it's usually better to move people towards more moderate forms of religion, or just broadly like introduce, I guess, cultural reforms that touch everyone, and if religious people fall in line, like that kind of stuff. But I don't hate anyone who has a religious belief, and you don't seem to either, and I think that's a really good thing.
I love a lot of people who are religious. But the thing is that when religious people go from fundamentalism to being more moderate or more liberal, it tends to be because of anti-religious activism. So even when you see people not abandoning their religion, still keeping the Christian label or the Islamic label, like for example, the Christian reform or the Islamic reform movements were not responsible for those changes. They are the movements the Christian reformers or the Islamic reformers are the people that come after people are not abandoning outright, but being less influenced by the religion and being more influenced by other ideologies and other philosophy.
Because they're trying to bring their faith in line with the new cultural standard.
Yeah, so they come and like, oh, like, listen, oh, you're Muslim and you support gay rights? Oh shit, this is a problem. Okay, let me give you I don't want you to not be Muslim, so let's come up with a way for how you can be Muslim. But it was never those people that are trying to redefine scripture or redefine Christian. They are not the people who are changing people's opinion. I mean, one comparison is like, for example, if you look at Christian countries where it become less fundamentalist and they took Christianity less seriously. A lot of Islamic reformers keep pointing out at Martin Luther and the Protestant movement to show like, look, this is why Western European countries are not Christian theocracies because of Martin Luther. And I always want to correct them, like, it's not because of Martin Luther. Like the Protestants were as radical and sometimes even more radical than the Catholics.
And nowadays, they certainly fucking are, at least here in the United States.
Right. I mean, it was the Enlightenment movement in the 1800s, which was after the Protestant Reformation, that caused people to be less influenced by Christianity.
This shit bothers me so fucking much. You're so fucking right. When people are like, Islam needs a reformation like Christianity had. The fucking Reformation was about addressing grievances with the church, not about making it more progressive. The Reformation had fucking nothing to do with making the religion more modern. It was just a power grievance between the fucking what are they called, indulgences, the shit you could buy, and a bunch of other like improprieties in the part of the church. So people are like, oh well, we need that for Islam. That's what you need. You need to bring, I guess, like cultural liberalism to those parts of the world, and people will be brought over because of it.
We need more people like Voltaire, not like Martin Luther.
Yeah, and Muslims in America are more progressive on average than Christians are in America when polled on stuff like gay rights.
Okay. That's not fair though, because they're a minority there, and they would always pick the side of the people who are supporting the minority.
True, right? That is true, but that's exactly the point, right? If you, as progressive people, accept them, they're going to be brought in. Whereas if they've got, I remember I read about this after 9/11, Muslims were treated horribly in the U.S. And what that led to was a bunch of Muslim enclaves. Exactly, yeah. And that's what the terrorists do. When terrorists launch their attacks, they know that's going to lead to cultural backlash. The cultural backlash will ostracize the domestic Muslims in the country they attacked, and the ostracization is going to lead them to radicalization because they feel there's no chance of them being integrated anyway. Acceptance of these groups is the step towards liberalization.
This is why I always say the best way to fight Islam is to befriend Muslims. That's what I always say. But what you also said that you like the Enlightenment movement. Well, the Enlightenment movement was an anti-religious movement. It was anti-Christian. It was anti-Christian, right? It wasn't like, oh, let's change Christianity. It was coming up with better ideas that was competing with Christianity. Right? And I think this is what we need for the Islamic world as well. And we almost had that, actually. We almost had that. We had the golden age of, people call it the golden age of Islam. I don't like that term. I call it the golden age of Arabs and Persians, because it was a golden age not because of Islam.
It was just those groups had their civilization.
Yeah, and people were actively being more influenced by science and philosophy, and the influence of Islam was being reduced. You know who fucked it up? It was people like Ghazali, who came up with their idea. Like, they started writing about philosophers and how they're all heathens and anti-intellectual narratives, and he became very popular. And they basically fucked the Islamic world's age of enlightenment. But what I'm saying is that what we right now need in the Islamic world is its own age of enlightenment, which is, and what is the enlightenment is about the scientific method. It's about finding the truth. But what Islamic reform is like, oh, this is a very dangerous ideology. Let's replace this set of nonsense with a less harmful set of nonsense. Hey, let's look at this Quranic verse that very clearly says in black and white. There are some verses in the Quran that are up for interpretation. There are some vague ones, but there's some very clear ones out there. And one of them, it says that part 3 of, so if your wife doesn't listen to you, right? Mm-hmm. If you fear disobedience from your wife, step 1 is to stop talking to her as a punishment. Step 2 is to abandon her from your bed, kick her out, no sex for you. And if you still fear disobedience, step 3, and this is in the Quran, is that you beat her, right? You beat her. Like, it doesn't say you can beat her, it says you should beat her, right? But if you're a Muslim reformer, you could come and lie to people and be like, hey, maybe this verse that is clearly saying that you should beat your wife, maybe it means you should tickle your wife. I don't know. Maybe it means something else.
Beat her at Mario Kart, Pull up Skullgirls. Pull up Apex Legends. Beat her ass in that or something.
Right.
Well, that's a team game. But
you're lying to people, right? Like, are we really... basically, this is... I think the reform movement, when it's supported by non-Muslims, it's a form of bigotry. Because
it's cultural erasure in a sense. Yeah.
You're saying, you know what? We're smart enough to realize this is bullshit. But for you barbaric, backward people, as long as you believe in something that you don't blow us up, as long as we can give you some version of your fairy tale, which makes you just stay there and just don't harm us. And this whole stay there is also very racist, I think, because when Westerners talk about terrorism, they talk about Muslims killing non-Westerners. Most terrorism is Muslims killing Muslims, which they don't give a shit. Like, oh, this is fine. We just kill each other. I don't care, right? But this attitude of Islamic reform, I think, is very condescending to Muslims. I think Muslims are very capable of understanding, if we give them a chance, that this is all nonsense, right? We have shown that if you just give us access to Muslims,
show them a better way. Yeah, they have to make that move themselves. And if they keep the religiosity, it's them in line. Because if you're religious, and I'm not, and I never have been religious, so I guess I could be projecting a little bit here. But if you're being exposed to liberalization and your values are changing and you're beginning to be like, hey, gay people are human, gay people are cool, women are just people too, it's not a big deal, and then you think okay, well, I follow the light of Allah or whatever, I respect the hadith and the Quran and stuff. I cannot believe, a just God would permit the mistreatment of these people. Maybe people's interpretations of the hadith perhaps are not as punitive as I originally thought, and generally people's overall tendencies get moved over, but it's an internal process. It's a dialectic between their new cultural beliefs and their old ones, not an outsider imposing.
Well, it's a conflict between different ideas in their mind. I mean, this is not unique to Muslims. We all have different sources of influence. Some of them negative, some of them positive. I mean, Muslims are not, just Muslims. Muslims are not like robot that you just put the Quran as a code in them and just follow, oh, this is Allah's word and I need to follow it. They're influenced by Islam. They're influenced by the podcasts they listen to. They're influenced by the books they read, the shows they watch, the YouTube channels they follow. What I'm saying is that the less, even if you're still a Muslim, the less the influence of Islam, the better. And to do that, you need to have those competing ideas win over Islam. You don't need to change the Islam. You just need the competing ideas to win over them, right? So, but I don't need to comfort, for example, when you have a Muslim who is also a gay rights activist, people are like, okay, they came up, they come up with an excuse for why Islam is not anti-gay, even though it's completely anti-gay. So let them live with that. Let them think that Islam is not anti-gay. I'm like, no, I don't have to do that, because I actually give Muslims a lot more credit than most people do. If I tell this Muslim, oh, great job, I support. People are like, oh, look, these are Muslims who support gay rights, therefore Islam could be pro-gay. I'm like, no, Muslims can be pro-gay, Islam can never be pro-gay. If a Muslim is fighting for gay rights, I give the credit to that Muslim. I don't give credit to Islam. I don't give credit to the ideology that has always been homophobic. I give the credit to that Muslim. And if that Muslim asks me, first of all, I don't talk to a Muslim about their ideas unless they give me a green light to show that that is welcome. Like, I don't go tell people like, oh, your ideology is a lie. Like,
right. Obviously, within the tactful bounds of reasonable conversation.
But if she asks me, I would completely be like, yeah, I don't think Islam is compatible at all with gay rights. And I give Muslims enough. I think Muslims are not going to be like, oh shit, okay, I guess I'm anti-gay. If I convince a Muslim who is for gay rights or if a Muslim who is peaceful, if I actually convince them that Islam is violent, I'm pretty sure that Muslim is not going to be like, I guess I have to go kill some infidels now. Like, that's not how it works. What happens is either they're going to deny it, or they're going to be uncomfortable, in conflict about it, not know what it is, or they're going to just leave Islam. I'm like, okay, if this is Islam, fuck it then, right? And that happens a lot. But given that they are already progressive, given that they're already believe in ideas that I think is superior to Islam, that extra, I don't owe them the comfort that this is in line with their Islam. I don't owe them that. And I think people who are Islamic reformers will be like, oh, we need to tell them that this is in line with Islam. They're actually indirectly promoting a book that is homophobic, that is anti-woman, that is violent, that is pro-slavery. You are basically, by adding all these people as supporters of this book, you're giving the book a legitimacy that it doesn't deserve. And you're giving credit for all the great good work that Muslims are doing. You're giving credit to an ideology that it doesn't deserve any credit. I mean,
I completely agree with you. That's why I'm like so shocked how base this conversation ended up being. Like I said earlier, my interactions with people who are out and about atheists tend to be suffering because they're usually using their ideological critique as a guise for genuine bigotry, and they tend to be every bit as dogmatic as the people they're criticizing. The new atheist movement online, some of the stuff like Sam Cedar, for example, or like some of the communities these people propagate are unironically just as fucking toxic as the religious groups they initially criticized. I'm genuinely shocked that this is not the case, and yes. Did I say Sam Cedar again? Chat, did I say Sam Cedar again? I do that every time. Sam Harris. There can only be one Sam in my brain at one time. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, Sam Harris. My apologies. Anyway, I'm just happy that didn't end up being the case.
Well, okay, I'm not gonna. So here's one thing. I'm not gonna go into individuals, because every individual, they say things that I completely disagree with and things that I agree with, right? So I'm not. Just like every country that I cannot completely denounce, like even Saudi fucking Arabia has some amazing activists, atheist activists, and secular activists, and women rights activists that are working in the So I just want to make sure, like, I'm not going to spend time talking about.
Oh no, I'm not trying to incite criticism of any of these groups. I'm just saying my experiences have generally been negative.
But okay, so here's one thing I say about atheists. Anybody, like, we have a shit ton of assholes in our community, right? But we shouldn't hide our assholes, because one thing that some atheist groups do is that they go beyond trying to claim that, we're an atheist rights activist as well. Like, we're not just arguing against religion, we're also trying to fight for atheists around the world. And one thing I'm critical of a lot of other atheist groups is that they keep trying to make it seem like we're better, right? And I'm like, can we not do that? All I'm trying to do with me and my team, with our activism, is to show that we're not less. We're not inferior to you. Like, please don't mistreat us. Please don't kill us for our atheism. Please don't send us to jail for our atheism. Please don't torture us. Please don't abandon us from your family. Please don't kick us out of your house because we're atheists. That's the active. Like, we are not. Don't treat us as inferior. But I'm very careful not to go and claim that, oh, we're better than religious people because we're atheists. Like, I think, given that we don't believe in God, I just think like we just got the answer to one question right over religious people. And we probably have a lot of different questions that we have got the answer to those wrong. And maybe these religious people got the answers to that right. And we got that wrong, right? So we have our fair share of racists. We have our fair share of homophobes. We have our fair share of transphobes. We have all of those people. All I'm saying is like, okay, if you find a racist, homophobe, misogynist, atheist, please be a dick to him because he's a homophobe, because he's a racist, because he's a transphobe. Do not be a dick to him because he's an atheist, and do not generalize. Do not say like, oh, this is atheist. Just the same way that Muslims, we try to tell people not to judge all Muslims based on terrorists or based on their radical groups. We encourage people not to do that. Please don't do that with us as well.
It's a little surreal to hear that because over here in the U.S., and I'm sure you've heard this before, but over here in the U.S., it's kind of a joke of atheists being oppressed because in most of America, an ostensibly secular country, usually when people are like who identify as atheists are like getting really up in arms, these tend to be people who have never like experienced any substantive oppression for their belief. Obviously, you were born in Iran, where that is not the case. So it's just a funny cultural difference, I think, that like there are parts of the world.
Some parts of the United States, it's a bit tough.
No, that's true in the Bible. But yeah, no, I know. My extended relatives are in Alabama and Florida. So yeah, I know. But for a lot of it at least. But obviously nothing compared to what you have experienced or what atheists in Iran or Saudi Arabia or what have you have experienced for what they've gone through.
Pretty easy compared to a lot of ex-Muslims out there. But I mean, the stories I hear is insane. Like, I don't want to over-victimize myself. I mean, the worst thing that would happen was that I actually tried to kill myself because of my Islamic beliefs at some point. I don't know if you want to hear that. That's a weird story.
If you want to share a sad story, absolutely, go for it.
Well, I mean, it's not that it's sad. It's kind of weird. When I was so based on if a Sunni Muslim hears this, they're going to get really angry with me because they go like, Armin, that's Shia Islam in Iran. This is not representative of your life. Yeah, okay, whatever. This is what we learned in school, and I acted based on what I learned in our school. Okay, so what we were told is that in Islam, there's no sin before you hit the age of maturity, right? Before you hit adulthood, right? In Christianity, you're born with sin, but in Islam, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. If you're a child, you cannot be held responsible for any actions because you're not, your mind isn't developed that for as much, right? So there's no sin before the age of reason. That's what they call it, the age of reason, right? So for boys, that age is 15, and for girls, that age is 9, right? So that means that. Yeah, I mean, so they told us in school because Islam values women a lot, and they think women are smarter than men. That's what they told us. But then later on, I realized that that's actually because those are the ages of marriage. That's why it's 15 and 9, right? So because you cannot marry.
Ulterior motive over there, maybe.
Yeah. So. So that means that anything I do before age of 15 is not counted as a sin. And I was as a child, I was terrified about going to hell. Like, the idea of going to hell was like really, like, I actually light a match and I put it on my arm just to see how much burning hurts at some point. And then I tried to imagine that all over my body, and I was like, fucking hell, there's no way I could how could I tolerate this for 5 seconds all over my body? I would like, now imagine that for 10 minutes. I imagine that for thousands of years. Like, and I was so shocked at why nobody seems to care. Like, these people, everybody I ask, do you believe in hell? People, heaven and hell? People are like, yeah. I'm like, aren't you worried about going to hell? And nobody seemed worried. Most people that I knew didn't do anything that made them, they call themselves Muslim, but they never prayed, they never go out to a mosque, they didn't fast during Ramadan, they drank alcohol, they had sex before marriage. And like, oh yeah, I'm Muslim. And like, aren't you afraid of going to hell? They're like, no, I don't think so. Like, what the fuck? Like, have you read God's book? Because you're gonna go to hell. So I was very terrified about going to hell. But then I thought, like, okay, suicide is a sin in Islam, right? Mm-hmm. But there's no sin before the age of reason. So suicide cannot be a sin if I do it before age 15. So I actually wanted to make sure I thought I found a loophole. I thought like I have like a loophole in the system that I could like get like a cheat code that I could get out of this very dangerous game that I'm playing, that the cost of losing seems to be huge, and nobody even asked me if I want to play this game, and I'm stuck in it. I asked my religious teacher, Islamic teacher in school, like, if I just kill myself before age 15, given that I haven't committed any sin, wouldn't I just go to heaven? And he said, like, yes, all children who die will go to heaven, but because you didn't earn heaven, you will go to the lowest part of heaven. You know, apparently heaven has different layers, and the highest part is for martyrs, and that's where Muhammad is.
I didn't know there were multiple parts, but hey, okay. Yeah. Hey, you know, sub-heaven is better than hell.
That's what I said. I'm like, I don't give a shit which part of heaven.
Like,
I will take a parking lot for eternity as long as that guarantees me not burning. So I jumped out of the window of my school. I broke both my legs. I broke my left arm. I fractured my back. I was in a wheelchair and my bed for 7 months. The only reason why I didn't try that again is because I saw my dad cry for the first time. I saw my mom collapse on the floor in the hospital. And I felt very, I saw what I did to them, and I felt very guilty about that. So I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. But honestly, if I saw myself back then today, because me becoming an atheist is exactly what I was afraid of. If I knew I was going to become an atheist, I would have tried a million.
Yeah, you're going to hell now. Whoops.
Yeah. But this is why I think idea dangerous. Here's the thing. My conclusion is solid. Like, you cannot deny that. Given the premises that I was given, my conclusion makes, even today, I think made absolute sense.
No, that's genius. Honestly, you get to opt out early. Yeah, it's like getting a free trial on life. Like, if you back out in the first month, you don't get charged.
So this is the problem with religion, because if you have nonsense as your premises, applying good logic to false premises gets you really bad conclusions. The only way you could get good conclusions out of bad premises is if you give people faulty logic. So when people say like, oh, Islamic reform, so you're dealing with false premises. There is a God. This is a book revelation from God, and you start with bad ideas, bad premises, and you want to get them to like, oh yeah, support like progressive ideas and be. So how you get there? The only way you get there is using bad logic. So Islamic reform is encouraging bad logic.
You want to give them the good processes, not the good outcomes. The methods by which they get there are more important than the actual outcomes.
Yes, critical thinking skills, knowing logical fallacies, looking for evidence. This is why I would be against palm reading as aggressively as I am against Islam. Because we're like, oh, palm reading is not dangerous. Where are the wars that people are waging against each other because of palm reading? Like, there's not, like, how many terrorist attacks are there because of palm reading? Well, but I will fight against palm reading, because if you are likely to believe in palm reading,
there's a bunch of other bad stuff that you're open to as well.
Yes, you are probably one of those people that also believe that vaccines cause autism, right? Right, you will believe that as well. Like, so if I notice that you believe in palm reading, I will use that as an excuse to show you why that's bullshit, and you will take those tools for recognizing why that's bullshit against all form of. I mean, you're a gullible person. You could be used. You could be used for someone's agenda. You could be used for someone's political career to vote a certain way. If you believe in palm reading, you're just there for people to be take advantage of, right? So I am against Islam. I do think right now it's the most dangerous living religion, right? But even if it wasn't, even if it was a the most loving, passive religion, didn't encourage any violence, didn't have any homophobia, didn't have any misogyny, none of that. If it's based on faith and if it's based on belief in God, I would have fought against it as aggressively as I am.
That's what I've always said, and why it's always bugged me that people have been like, "Oh, yeah, Christianity and Islam are bad. If only we had peaceful religions like Hinduism and Buddhism." Like, motherfucker, go just like, okay, actually, look, I know, we all live here in America, but if you turn your eyes to the east, you will find quite a bit has been done, and currently is being done, as a matter of fact, on the back of those religions. Buddhism, the imperialism that happened in Japan, what happened to China for a few millennia, and what's happening right now with the Hindus and the Muslims. I agree. I don't like superstition very much.
That's nice.
I actually feel
I was ready for a fight. I don't know what
Yeah,
happened.
I know. I was ready before you came on. I was like, oh man, am I in the headspace to do a debate right now with all the riots that are going? I was like, oh, let me think. I really appreciate you coming on, like massively. This ended up being such a good conversation.
Maybe I will disappoint you next time when we get into some other. If you have me again, I don't know.
Oh no, no, absolutely, yeah. No, we'll find something. I'm sure if we dig down deep enough, we can find maybe a candy bar one of us likes, the other thinks is disgusting, or we'll find.
I'm sure
something.
if we get to politics, we're gonna have some major disagreement. But hey, if we have disagreements, I'm more than happy for me. Like people are like, oh, somebody defeated you and humiliated you, and this. I'm like, oh, that's great. So if somebody. What does it mean if somebody wins an argument against you? It means like they were probably had better logic, and I have to go reevaluate what I believe. So it would be more exciting if somebody defeats me in an argument, because it means like if I don't change my mind about something for a very long time, I become very worried. I'm like, what the fuck am I? I'm pretty sure I'm wrong about some fundamental things.
That is,
I'm not arrogant. So
way too healthy of a mindset for YouTube. This place is a fucking wasteland of fucking debate bros and logical fallacies. It's impossible here. Over here, winning an argument is just whoever manages to bring up embarrassing photos of the other person first. That's pretty much the extent to which it runs. Do you prefer to go by Armin or Mr. Navabi, or what? How do you?
Armin's fine.
Armin, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Chat loves you as well. It's not just me.
Thank you, guys.
You are enormously larger than I am online. But with that being said, would you like to shout out like a page or any socials?
Oh yeah, I mean our Facebook page, yes, but not our YouTube channel. So we could, if you guys want to check out our YouTube channel, and just search for Atheist Republic on YouTube, and subscribe to us there. That would be amazing. Yeah, and we don't need much help on Facebook, but our YouTube channel. I swear a lot on Facebook, on YouTube. Maybe that's why our YouTube channel is not growing. There's something happening. You know what? We have a Persian Atheist Republic channel as well called Jumhuriye Bi Khodayan, which we do this content for a Persian audience, and that channel seems to be doing growing faster now, even though it's much smaller. And I think it's because YouTube algorithm doesn't detect all the bullshit that we're saying in Persian, right? So
it's only picking up you see like politics or gay or homophobe or kill with like YouTube algorithms like nope, but fucking it's all gibberish to them. It's just written for English. Oh God. Absolutely. Good luck with the channel. I have been trying to get on Facebook as well, but I've been so busy. I haven't been trying that hard lately. But we gotta reach out on as many platforms as we can. Thank you. You do phenomenal work. And trans rights. Thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah, trans rights.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye.